All right. So this
Kifu,
first,
wait a minute.
yes.
Before we start, I have to say thank you to you for taking this leap of faith and love with spirit in the last few months. It has been such a pleasure to be connected with you. So I also just want to say thank you to the MEV team who brought us together, and without them knowing, what would emerge, the healing that has emerged for both of us in our conversation. So I wanted to just pause and start with a deep gratitude to the MEV team and to Kifu for joining me in my own path and where I'm at right now, right? Meeting me where I'm at in my life right now. And then everyone that is taking this journey with us in this conversation as well. I just want to say thank you for being interested in learning about the plants and seeing how you yourself can deepen your own relationship with the plants, with the earth, as we move through a lot of internal chaos, external chaos, and moments of peace, and hopefully also moments of connection with our loved ones. Okay, now I'm ready for your questions.
Awesome. Okay. So this very first question is, right, it's deep and it's juicy. How is spiritual practice connected to plant medicine, right? And that can be, how is your spiritual practice connected to plant-based medicine, or how in general is spiritual practice connected to plant-based medicine?
Thank you. Well, I think the first thing that comes up for me when I read this question earlier and you posed it to me as a starter, I immediately connected to the elements, air, fire, earth, water, and how grounding, and how I often go to the elements as part of my spiritual practice. And even, as we are connecting via Zoom and with all this technology literally around me to make this happen, from where I am, I can see the earth holding me. I can feel the trees and the wind. I'm in Silver Creek, Mississippi right now, and there's a storm coming in. And I can't help but recognize that where I'm at right now is exactly where I'm supposed to be, and that it's part of my spiritual path and my spiritual practice. Another thing that comes up for me with this question is that the earth is, and plant medicine for me has been a homecoming, homecoming to the earth, but also homecoming to myself. The earth being my first mother, my first parent, my first guide, my first home. And then this physical body being an earth in itself as well, for my spirit to be learning the lessons of the human, right, that I am in this time. I would say that my spiritual practice started when I was a child, learning from my mom and her plants. She had an apothecary. Little does she know how much she influenced me with her own apothecary. Because of her own religious beliefs, she didn't connect necessarily spirit with the plants, right? But this is a healing that I'm doing for my own family and for my mother, is connecting with the spirit of the plants, which she connected me to the medicinal practices and uses of plants as a child and, growing up. And now, in the last 10 years with my elder and my family, my chosen family who are also earth workers, reconnecting to the spirit of plants, to the spirit of trees and rocks and everything that surrounds us. So I'll pause there, because I could share more, but I want to ask you the same question. How is your spiritual practice, or how is spiritual practices connected to plant-based medicine for you?
Thank you for asking me that question. I also want to encourage folks who may have questions about some of the things that Agua, Dulce, and I are talking about, maybe words we might use, a spiritual practice they may have some questions about, or maybe they have some stuff that they just brought with them anyway and they just want to ask us. Put that in the chat. Right, we'll have a juicy Q&A at the end, and so we're keeping track of your questions. Oh my goodness. So I start each morning by making coffee and in my French press. And I have 4 ancestors who walk with me always. And 2 of them are maternal and a paternal grandmother. And then 2 of them are ancestors so much older than that. I don't know them. And inside of those, when I pour my coffee, I also pour a little bit of coffee in for the ancestors without cream, because I can't imagine that they used coconut creamer like I like. And I sprinkle skullcap and rose hips and a couple of other herbs that I'll keep to myself into each of these jars, and I speak into the bowls. And ask for very specific things to shift and move in my life, for them to help me remove obstacles. So part of my practice and my medicine and my magic is to engage spirit in a conversation that I have to say out loud, and the herbs are a part of it. I have to touch the herbs with my fingers, right? And then I have to rub the herbs and the coffee together. So I'm saying all of that because for me, they are all intertwined. I don't have a spiritual practice that's separate from my relationship with herbs. And some of that is based upon a medicine wheel that I use, which is the Dagara West African medicine wheel. In this system, I am nature Dagara. And so this means that I believe that I am connected to all things in nature. And there isn't any separation between the 2 of us. So tending to them is also this self-care and work that I do for myself. Taking in the medicine of the plants, especially some that are rich in chlorophyll, is because chlorophyll and hemoglobin are only 1 molecule apart. Yeah, and I think lastly, as part of my spiritual belief, my understanding of a body coming out of balance, right, is that in a lot of ways, before you notice that you have something going on with your body where you may need plant medicine, there's something going on in the spiritual realm first. There's something going on with you emotionally. There's something going on with you, maybe something coming, something that you're holding epigenetically, right? Something from your ancestors. So there's an energy and a frequency that's going on. A lot of times in the spirit realm, we don't notice it, and we don't usually notice things until they happen inside of our bodies, right? And the little plantitas have a different relationship with spirit. And so a lot of ways they are a conduit, right? They are the way that spirit gets medicine inside our bodies through the plants. So yeah, me and these little plants rock hard. And so that's how they're connected for me, and the place that I come from when I'm offering up plant medicine for this moment. Right.
I love that. I love that so much, Kifu. And that reminds me how I first got connected to flower medicine when I was maybe 21, 22. And I was going through a very hard time emotionally, experiencing a lot of grief and depression and self-isolation. And I remember asking myself, right, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to pull myself out of the waters, because I was deep in my own waters, and not feeling like I can connect to other two-leggeds, to other humans to help at that point. And I'm not sure why, other than, spirit called me to the flowers, and I started to at that time I was living in San Francisco, and I didn't have a garden for a while. So at that time I would go to farmers markets and just places where I can get flowers, even making relationships with my neighbors to have flowers in my house as often as possible. And how the flowers started to shift my own energy and my own depression and my own grief still is, it boggles my mind. Like I can't believe, even though I've been studying with the flowers for all this time at this point, I'm still in amazement at the power of flower medicine, at the power of plant medicine. Once we begin to ingest it, wear them, talk to them, listen to them, share them with other people, the power that the plants, the spirit of the plants have to shift legacies of depression in my own family, legacies of grief in my own family. And so thank you for bringing up that often we don't know what's happening, until our body is aching, right? And then we're like, oh, I should take, this plant, or I should do this practice with the tea. And the last thing I'll say is the other thing I've learned, and it's kind of like an ego check for me as a human, Often we say the plant is going to help me, or it's gonna, like, I'm gonna take the plant and I'm gonna get to know the plant. I hear a lot of us say that, I say that. And really what's actually happening is the plant is getting to know us. The plant spirit is getting to know what we need, and then it works itself out in our body versus vice versa, right? Where it's like, I'm going to take this plant and it's going to heal me. It is, but what it's doing is, and that's why consistency, right? With taking plant medicine, you can't just say, I can't just say, I'm going to, take this tincture or take this flower essence and everything's going to change for me. I'm going to stop getting these headaches. I'm going to, not be sad anymore. It's actually a deep relationship that the plants call us into, a deep relationship with ourself, our self-care, our community care, and with the plant itself. So thank you. Let's move on to our second question. We can get that slide up. All right, so I absolutely love this question, Kifu, and I'm excited to hear what you have to share with us about it. How has the pandemic impacted your ability to sustain yourself? How has it created opportunities for interdependence, within your own family, blood and chosen, and or your community.
Let me tell y'all something. I although I did not grow up in the church, because I am a Black woman in the South, um, there are things that I know. And there's this song or a piece of a song about knowing you've been changed, right? It's like, I know I've been changed, right? And that is this pandemic has broken me down to dust, right? Somebody asked me to not stop singing. Now, I can't sing, but I do know that song. And when I feel right, when you think about like what it means to be changed, you know you gotta be busted all the way down. And I, as someone who spends a tremendous amount of time with the plants, living outside, being in my camper, being in the woods, traveling, and not being able to move like that has made me, I haven't felt this way since I was a little kid. And under the rules of my parents about, the restrictions on my movements. In the midst of that, I received information that I needed to help support an elder transition. So during a pandemic, I'm also doing this death doula work. And so whatever notions I had, false notions I had of being able to continue to do the work that I do, which is mostly in person. Now having to switch it to online offerings, online meetings, online healing circles, while I am also unable to leave the house. The place that I've been staying was very intense stay-at-home order. And also we wanted to honor that because the elder was immunocompromised. So literally the house and the patio for 4 months. And I didn't think that I was gonna make it. I didn't think that I was gonna make it. As I was doing this holy, holy work, I was circling the drain and feeling like I just wanted to get in my car and like steal out in the middle of the night. So instead of doing that, when people started asking me how I was doing, I started telling the truth, like in all the ways. I like to be someone who offers up tools and tips and solutions. And so in order to get what I needed to humble myself and literally just let people see me in with no haircut and eyebrows akimbo and and not taking the teas I'm supposed to be taking and saying I need help. And so people were shocked. They were like, "Oh, Kifu, we thought you were like in the woods somewhere living your best life." And I created help after the shock. offered themselves up to check on me regularly, to send me letters, to make sure that I was sleeping and eating properly, to put a plan of care together for me, to make sure that I was taking my mineral boosting herbs of oat straw and nettles, making sure that I was infusing my day with the nervines that I lean heavily on: skullcap, lemon balm, and lavender. So yes, the pandemic has disabused me of any belief I had that I could do pretty much anything alone, and in the shadows. So alone, and not really letting people know what was really going on with me. Um, and that's how I've been able to sustain myself. Oh my goodness. What a question.
Thank you. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have to say that our this pandemic have, yeah, we're so please come on time. Just to hear you from an honest space invited me always to that space. So thank you.
You're welcome. Agua Dulce, we're having a little bit of difficulty hearing you. Can you try, I'm going to ask, as I ask you this question, can you try putting, turning your video off and see if we can hear you a little bit better?
Yes. Let me do that. Okay, we can try this.
Okay, let's see if this works. Okay. Yeah, so here we are in this pandemic, COVID-19, coronavirus, the Rona, hashtag Rona. So, right, depending on she has many names, they have many names. So how has this pandemic impacted or even allowed you to sustain yourself, and how has it created opportunities for you to lean into your blood or chosen family, right? Really lean on interdependence, and yeah, like what you've been doing.
Thank you. Thanks, Kifu. Yes. Between the pandemic and what has happened for me is a forced clarity. I just want to check if you can hear me because you're frozen.
We're having some difficulty hearing you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think we lost them. That's okay.
Yes.
Yes. All of our computers and our internet are working really hard because, as you've talked about, Kifu, everything is online now.
It is.
We're really tired. While we wait for Agua Dulce to reconnect, there were some questions that came in the chat. Do you want to? So I'm wondering if maybe we can do that, and maybe staff is going to help support with getting Agua Dulce back on the call.
Perfect.
All right. So one of the questions that we had was from Nicole Thomas, and Nicole asked, do you ever pair plant and flower medicine with other healing modalities like stones and crystals?
This is such a good question. So yes. I'm surprised that I don't have them on. I normally carry or have on my wrist obsidian bracelets, and also an amethyst bracelet, the obsidian for protection, and the amethyst for amplification, right? So I basically wear the amethyst in the middle, and then on either side I have the obsidian. You know what I'm saying? So like Wonder Woman style, block it out. And I also literally have the stones somewhere on my body. So I tuck malachite, which is really a wonderful protection stone for children, but it's wonderful for the heart. So yes, a protection stone for children, protection stone in general. Malachite's beautiful. Also rose quartz, also obsidian. I just like stuff them in my bra, right? And I think the other thing is, if you have an opportunity to get to the water, and I'd make an offering. If I get to the Eno, which is in Durham, I make an offering to Oshun with some honey and some pennies, and then ask for some rocks. And I like to take those river rocks and carry them in my pockets. So if the question is it specifically this herb for this thing and this rock and stone for this thing, I don't do that necessarily. But they're acting in tandem. For example, I think I mentioned that the plants' bodies are conduits, right? So that allows the medicine to get into our body. So part of my spiritual practice, the belief is that everything has a certain thing that it's really good at. So plants are good at getting us medicine. Stones are really good for holding grief, and also blocking out the haters. So you can get they're good energy blockers, right? Just their molecular construction allows them to hold grief and offer a protection. So I definitely feel like you got to do it all. Mm-hmm. If that answers the question. Okay.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. We have two questions from Diana Mendoza. The first one is, why does the plants in my house get dry? And then the second is, what type of leaf can we eat that is recommended for the knee? I'm guessing maybe they're experiencing some type of knee pain.
Knee pain. So why do the plants in your house get dry? Well, where do you live? I think the question could definitely be where you live. And they're one of the ways that you can make your environment more moist is, some folks will say, oh, go and buy a humidifier. You could do that. You can also just boil water on the stove. And so, right, you can do that. And it will release water molecules into the air. The other thing is you could get a mister or a spray bottle and just have a practice, depending on the plant, either a daily or weekly because you don't want to overwater plants that don't require that much. So it really depends on the kind of plant you're talking about. You could also ask the plant, why are you so dry? which is super woo, and I don't have plants speak to me in their little plant voice all the time, but every once in a while I have been out in a field and heard plants speak back to me. So you could also ask your plants. Leaves you can eat for the knee. Let me see if spirit puts just something like right on my tongue. I mean, you can certainly chew cacao leaves. Don't do that. You that might make you feel better. Wow. Yeah, I think we're gonna I think I'll have to get back to you on that. I can't think of anything right now that I would say because most of the plants that you can, because you're asking for a very specific type of mechanism to be addressed, which is like pain. And most of the plants that I can identify and would say, oh, you should put that in their mouth. It's for, it could be an antimicrobial. Those are the ones that are super common and that you can even find out in your yard, that most of them are antimicrobial, antibacterial, antiviral. The ones for pain, kava kava, some of the other ones that I would recommend. I mean, you could, if you're out in the woods and you see willow, you can get some willow bark, which is the plant precursor to aspirin.
Willow bark?
Willow bark.
Okay. Precursor to aspirin. See?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so this is, I'd love to tell this beautiful story about willow bark, because one of the things that I love about being a community herbalist is you get to see talk to folks about things that they're used to taking, aspirins, Advils, those kinds of things. There's almost always a plant precursor to it. And pharmaceuticals are usually this process with which the alkaloid, right, the very the sort of action oriented component of a plant has been stripped away for that one particular thing. But aspirin, when you do that, causes pain, stomach and the pain, and erosion of the lining, right? Because it's meant to be taken with willow bark, which has this other component. It is, what's the word? Mucilaginous. It has this little slimy, smushy element to it, which soothes the stomach and the throat, right? So one of the beautiful things about whole plant medicine is that it delivers medicine for specific ailment, but also helps to counter any side effects. Oh yeah, willow bark.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're still troubleshooting with Agua Dulce, but we do have more questions.
Okay.
All right. So Michelle asks, what is the biggest lesson plant medicine has given you? And then a part two to the question is if there's any specific lesson from specific plants.
Yeah. Yeah. The biggest lesson. So I have a degree in biochemistry, and when I finished school, I was able to start doing work in clinical research and community health pretty soon after school. The community herbalist piece, the herbalism, was a thing that I did. My mama did it. My grandmama did it. Everybody I knew, this is what you do, right? So we didn't take any pharmaceuticals. I think the strongest thing we had in our house, real talk, was Hall's Mentholyptus, and it was like the honey lemon kind, and you only took it when things were really, really bad, right? When Really, like if someone had an injury where they needed stitches, you would give them Hall's mental lifters. So, but it wasn't anything that that I imagined myself sort of doing or being, like someone who talked about herbs, someone who shared herbal medicine. And 11 years ago, when I had an opportunity to sit down and say, what is it that I want to really be doing with my life, right? The first things I started doing were taking some of the clarifying teas, right? Some of the herbs that help you feel grounded. I've mentioned a couple of them already. Stinging nettles and oat straw. I started fasting and just drinking teas. I started spending lots of time outside and getting to know some of the native and wild plants where I lived. And in that process, and in that relationship building, it became clear to me that I could walk away from what I was doing before. Now, this is a huge leap of faith. Walk away from what I was doing before, which paid a significant amount of money. And live in accordance with my actual values and my spiritual belief, and also pay my bills. So the biggest lesson I'd say that I've learned from the plants is that I did not have to believe the lie of capitalism, that I did not have to believe that I had to do this thing that I was just really good at. I've always been a scientist. I'll always be a scientist. But I thought that I had to do it because I was good at it and I went to school for it and I got a degree in it and paid a lot of money. It literally made me miserable. I was working for pharmaceutical companies. So it made me miserable. And I could not create a way out. But my deep relationship with not just the plants that I ingested, but my getting to walk around where I lived. Yeah, I the little plants have such little leaves, such little bodies, and I lean so heavily on them. But I get a lot of what when I am about to take a leap. That's where I go first, and somehow I am able to get the strength I need, specifically to follow my convictions, right? To to walk my talk.
Ashe. Thank you. Okay, we have one more question from one of our participants, and then I think we're gonna try a solution with Agua Dulce. They're having some problems with Zoom itself, so we're gonna try to see if we can get them to call in a different way.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this question asks, are there resources out there that center Black, Indigenous, and people of color herbal traditions? I found a library book that mostly focused on European plant histories and was hella disappointed.
Right. And shout out to whoever that was from the Bay who used hella. I miss being in the Bay sometimes. I was actually born in San Francisco. Okay. So this is a longer answer, and I will do it in reverse. So what I can offer is I will, and I'm sure Agua Dulce has some as well. We will offer links and some and reading materials, right? That we would recommend. So many BIPOC folks have been asking and answering this question, like for millennia, I feel like, or at least as long as I've been alive, and certainly during this pandemic. So there are juicy resources that have been collected, compiled, that I can make that offer to you. I think so. So yes, but I think I want to answer this question because I want to just name in this moment that herbal medicine, land-based practices are very much in the same category. When we first started this webinar, we talked about language justice, right? And the things that have been stripped from us. I have the honor, privilege, luxury, joy, right, to have been able to receive a tradition that was, passed down to my mother, who is still living, and we make medicine together. And for those of you who know me, I don't offer medicine past my pay grade, and so I will call my mama in a minute. That it feels like it's just that's actually the way it's supposed to be, but that particular tradition has been stripped away from people of color, Black people specifically, folks of the diaspora, Caribbean folks, lots of my fam in South America. Like there's and everywhere, right? But just the people I know specifically, that's who I'm naming. So there's a reason that it is difficult for you to locate information that's going to talk about things from a tradition. And then I think the other thing is in the United States, right? Like capitalism requires things to be commodified, pulled out, stolen, repurposed, and sold back to us. So right, we learn about herbs, and we learn, there's the beautiful, I think about Ayurveda, which is a beautiful system and a practice that I've just had an opportunity to dip my toe in, but most people learn about it from like Instagram products that are sold. So don't get discouraged, I think, in your quest to get information from true source and learn from practitioners who have an elder, right? Which is something that is important to me, that you learn from people who are learning from an elder. And then all of these folks who have been compiling information about practitioners and online classes and books and articles that you can read that come from the traditions that they originated from.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna ask Hermelsi to join us on off video, because they have Agua Dulce on the phone, and we're gonna just try to continue that way.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna make it work.
We're gonna make it do what it do. Okay.
Make it do what it do. Hermelsi, you there?
I am. So that folks aren't distracted by me, I'm actually going to turn my video off and just unmute.
Okay, sounds good.
And Agua Dulce, you can share whenever you're ready.
Okay, can folks hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. I'm so sorry about this. There's a beautiful storm outside my window that I think is just blocking most Wi-Fi from me. But I am grateful that it is working right now. I believe the question is something around resources for folks to deepen their learning and relationship with plants.
That is correct.
Okay, great.
Specifically,
I heard most of what Kifu shared, and I appreciate it. I think the biggest thing for me as a learner was to go outside and actually lay on the ground, watch the earth, touch the trees, smell the flowers, and start learning by doing, learning by allowing myself and my own heart and spirit to pause enough, right, in the quickness of the world and the quickness of capitalism, that I allow myself to pause to actually listen to what the plants have to say and teach me at that moment. And I would say that's like for me the biggest first step towards this connection that we want to call people back to.
Ashe. That's all right. Okay. Can you hear me asking you this question?
Yes, Kifu. I can
Okay.
hear
You can hear me? Okay. So we want to know how the pandemic has impacted your abilities to sustain yourself. And if it's allowed you to have opportunities for interdependence with your family, blood and chosen, and your community.
Thank you. I hear some ruffling, but so let me know if you can't hear me at any point. I would say that between the pandemic and the uprising, I have been forced into deep clarity and honesty with myself about the type of life that I want to live and the type of example that I want to be for young people, for children, for my family, and for my community. And this definitely is inclusive of following in the plants and the earth's path and guidance around interdependence and sustainability. And I feel like the pandemic specifically really invited me to share with my loved ones more about where are we going, what kind of world do we want to help create, and how do we begin and continue to decolonize our own way of living and our speech and our hearts and minds. So I definitely feel like the pandemic has lent itself to sometimes, a little bit rough around the edges, but to really have me be more honest about, these conversations and how are we going to survive, because capitalism isn't what I'm aiming for in terms of what kind of world I want to see in the future. So how do we create that world right now, even just with our own family and our community here, whether it's in Los Angeles, in Mississippi, or in Puerto Rico, or the Bay, which are the 4 places that I feel that I'm connected to because of my loved ones. And I'll pause there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Agua Dulce. It has been an honor to bear witness. I think I talk about this a lot with people who I have the luxury of bearing witness to their life. And really, I get to do that a lot as a community herbalist, as someone who people trust with their stories and their secrets. And their shame sometimes, right? And so this it's been beautiful to bear witness to you moving through your to the answers coming to you, or maybe for you listening to the answers that have been shouting at you, right? And have you bear witness to mine. So I appreciate that.
That's right. you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure we have time for our last question, Kifu. I want to do a time check. Do we have about 15 minutes? Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, it's about 15 minutes left.
Okay, great. Yeah. So, do I have your permission to skip to our last question? I wanna jump into this with you.
Okay. Skipping to the last question.
It's a question about what's next. Creating infrastructure for mental health response teams, localized healing hubs, and an integrated movement ecosystem. I want to hear your thoughts on this. You have the movement. You have been a part of movement making. You've been deep in healing justice. You're a community herbalist. You are visionary, and I know from my own experience of organizing with healers is that we have vision. You know, we know the answers that we know the answers, or at least how to get to the answers to the hard questions that our world is facing right now around these things of interdependence and sustainable communities, and how do we take back our mental health, and how do we, take back our lives and our health. And so anything you want to share about this, I would love for folks to be enlightened by you.
I just be saying what Spirit tells me to say. And thank you for asking me, because one of the things I think sometimes as medicine people, which you named, people don't know is that we are master strategists. You can't look at the plants and see their systems, right? And study them daily and not have some really good ideas about how we as people can utilize the systems and the patterns that are all around us. So I'm gonna go, because of the time, because I also want to hear from you, I'm gonna go kind of zoom out really, really far to answer this question. So I believe that what's next and what we can be doing during this pandemic, during this, we are still in uprising mode, right? We're just in a different phase of it, right? And of course, the elections going on, for some people in the forefront, for some people in the background. Children at home who we may not be used to having at home, or who we are very delighted to have at home, whichever one of those. And our movements still being, and I mean our movements, our physical movements still being restricted. For me, the answer is, how can you get in relationship with and on to some piece of land? So in every single organization that I'm either a member of, or I'm on the board of, or have some sort of, somebody asks me what I think, I say, we got all this money coming in to get out the vote. We got all this money in for Black lives, as it should be coming in. We got this influx of resources. How are we going to get some piece of vibrant, juicy land that can sustain us and sustain future generations, right? And all of the things that can happen there, whether it's retreat space or growing food or living on it or practicing our self-governance. But taking this opportunity, right, to focus on a long-term strategy, as we are also dealing with the things that we have to focus on acutely, right? So that's one of the things I scream from the rafters as someone who is a land steward and someone who knows that that's where the answers are. So that's something that I encourage folks to really think about, like and it doesn't have to, in the South, we also have the luxury of having land everywhere, right? So there isn't a scarcity of land. So that I am coming from that Southern perspective, and I know it's different depending on where you are in the country. But having an opportunity to get somewhere where you can get your feet in the dirt on a consistent basis is something that, and I've been pushing this for very long, that these solutions, these land-based, actually on some land-based strategies need to be a part of our political strategy, of our movement-basing strategies, of the work that we're doing across the board. If we're talking about women, girls, if we're talking about Black bodies, if we're talking about brown bodies, if we're talking about like for real healing, land needs to be a part of it. So I'm going to say that because I want to hear from you. And I know you got juicy stuff about what your vision is.
Yeah, I love that response. Thank you. And the other day when we were checking in, you said, just get on the land and everything else is going to get figured out. The people, the resources will come. And I really believe that. So thank you for sharing that. And for me, what's next is definitely connecting with earth people that know that the answers are in the earth, that know that the answers will come from our feet as they walk through grass and the earth itself. The answers will come through, smelling the flowers and the plants. And it sounds like hokey, but it's really not. Like allowing ourselves to learn from how plant communities organize themselves, and then us replicating or attempting to replicate that interdependence, that that yarrow that helps other plants heal by releasing a chemical that heals other plants. Right? How can I be like that yarrow? How can I release smile? How do I release energy that helps my neighbor? So I think that's one thing, one step. The other is definitely, and I'm really deeply involved in this in the Bay Area and in California. How are we creating infrastructure for mental health response teams and this thing that we came up with, localized healing hubs, because psychology and healing and health belongs to us. It belongs to ourselves, to our spirit, and so our spirit really has to lead in the alternatives to incarceration, right? In all the alternatives to capitalism and white supremacy. Everything that white supremacy has taught us about being disconnected to our bodies is absolutely wrong, and we just gotta take it off the table and land on our feet on the earth. So I really appreciate that we can have this conversation, Kifu, that we can invite folks into it. And I know that, it was short and sweet, and I really hope that folks continue the conversation in their own cities, in their own communities, and that, I know y'all are invited to for sure connect with me if you're in California, Mississippi, Puerto Rico, anywhere in the world. I'm totally down to continue this conversation, because it's what, literally this conversation is what is saving my own life, saving my spirit from drowning in the lies of capitalism and the lies that I have to keep chasing money to be able to survive and live well. So yeah, I'll pause there so that you can help us wrap up, Kifu. I went a little everywhere.
No, so much of this offering is channeling from the plants and from spirit. So thank you. Yeah, this is so juicy. And so many other conversations I know will be continued after this, and I know the team will send out our contact information if you want to speak with us individually, or maybe just have us come and talk with some of the organizations that you work with. But yeah, I want to go to this piece around like what's next, the overarching question, and it makes me think of what started to happen at the very beginning of the pandemic, right? I started getting all of these emails about participating in mutual aid projects. And I was like, do I know what mutual aid is? So I spent some time, I mean, right? People talk about stuff and all these words. I don't know if they know what these words mean. So I was like, do I actually know what this means? So I started doing what you should do, which is some study and some rigor to make sure that I understand what it means. And I was like, oh, this is the stuff that communities do for each other anyway, right? But it needs to be ramped up because we're in a crisis. And so one of the things that instead of participating in lots of different mutual aid projects, which I did not do, except this juicy BIPOC mutual aid product to get out herbs, was to take the time to have conversations with the people who are the closest to me. So I definitely want to say, as we're thinking about these, about any of these responses, again, because we're in a position that we're not normally in, we're normally at our jobs or traveling or doing the most, we're stuck at home for the most part a little bit, or for a lot of us, and or limited movement. So take the time to actually go deeper with folks, right? And to go deeper with folks and get to know them and what their needs are, and make plans of care that are really local, right? And right, and sustainable. So I think a lot of our work sometimes requires us to go wide and far. And so during this pandemic, I think one of the lessons from COVID-19 is to go small and local. Yes? Okay. I'm going to lean back because I know that our that our presenters and our holders of space have things to say.
Thanks, Kifu.
Welcome back, Agua Dulce. It's good to see your face again. I don't know if you want to share anything else now that folks can see you.
No, just so much gratitude. You know, I hope that we continue the conversations in all the ways that we can, that we feel called to. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Wow, this has been very rich, and so grateful for the both of you for sharing all of your knowledge, for being so vulnerable, and for really, I think, making it plain that this relationship and connection to plants is that in this practice is also how we practice being in relationship to each other as humans, right? That relationship to beings in general. And that part of what the plants teach us is how to care for each other, is how to have grace and dignity and patience and respect for one another. And in all of the various ways. And this last piece of what you were talking about around what's next, how are we creating infrastructure for mental health? We know right now healthcare is in crisis. There's really no other way to say it. You know, COVID-19, for me, COVID-19, what it helped to do was really just highlight all of the cracks, right? And all of the ways that these systems were failing us already, and just exacerbated it. And so I really want to lift up what you're saying here around how it is that we can be in an ecosystem of tapping into the plant, tapping into land, and with each other to really build these infrastructures for ourselves. So we have a couple more minutes left, and I wanted to just see if there were any more questions in the space. If anyone wants to offer anything up from any of our participants. And as Kifu mentioned, we will send an email afterwards. You'll look out for an email for us probably early next week with both Kifu and Agua Dulce's contact information, with also the links and to the resources that they've mentioned. And yeah, this is only the beginning. This is definitely an ongoing conversation. Well, Kifu, Agua Dulce, I will let you have the last word.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the last thing I want to share is that there's room for all of us in this world and in these movements that we create and that we're a part of. And for me, it's really taking to heart what role we each want to play in movement work. Do we are we the campaign advocacy, role? Are we the healer role? Are we the grassroots organizing? And then how all these roles can live together is so key and so important, that we're all a part of this ecosystem and that we're all respected in the ecosystem of movement. So I think that's something I'm walking away with, and that I'm really looking to the earth for answers and like guidance around that, because often we don't live our movement lives that way, right? We prioritize, we forget certain aspects, we forget that actually we need to heal in order to live out these amazing campaigns and advocacy that's happening right now. Powerful things are happening, and yet if we don't heal, if we don't reconnect to the earth, it feels hollow to me, in a sense, to be honest. So, Kifu?
I just want to lift up this question as you're doing your last word, Kifu, from Lila. What can organizations with gardens/outdoor spaces do to support wellness in this time?
Mm-hmm. Grow food. If you can, right? So, and growing food sometimes is less about the yield, right? What you're going to get from it and be able to eat, and more about the practice of being in relationship with the dirt and compost and the seeds, and knowing the moon cycles and when you should plant, which is at the new moon, and and when it's going to rain, like the things that you have to do as an organization in order to have the garden thrive are, I would say, almost more important than what beautiful, amazing thing will come out of it. You can also use those spaces just to get outside and do movement, any kind of movement work, any kind of mindfulness practice you can do in outdoor spaces. And the other thing I would say is offer it up to people in your community, right? So taking this opportunity, like I said earlier, to go small and local, is inviting people from your places that are surrounding where your organization is physically housed, to get to know you, either as an organization or just even as individuals. That's what I would say.
Amazing. Thank y'all both so much. This has been phenomenal. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, and invitation to everyone to keep learning, to keep growing, yeah, and return to the earth.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank y'all.
Right, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you to our language justice team. Thank you to MEB staff who helped that in the background. And thank y'all so much. Thank you to all our participants. We appreciate you. And hopefully you all saw in our newsletter next week, Kifu will be joining us again, this time with Heidi Maria Lopez, for a Black August Black Healing Space. It'll be a space that is for Black folks to come and to have some respite and participate in a healing circle with all that has happened and all that is going on. Black bodies, for us to come and really be together. So that's happening next week, the 26th, at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. All right, y'all.
All right. Thank you all.